Still Wakes the Deep traps players on a Scottish oil rig during a catastrophic storm in 1975, and things go violently wrong very fast. There are no weapons here, just pure survival instinct against something entirely incomprehensible tearing the facility apart. The voice acting and sound design are so intensely realistic that hearing the metal bulkheads groaning under pressure might actually raise your real-world heart rate. It's a highly focused cinematic experience that usually runs about $33, but seeing a massive 77% cut brings it down to $7.63. Getting Hollywood-level atmospheric horror for the price of a fast food burger makes grabbing this an incredibly easy decision. Experiencing the sheer scale of the rig collapsing around you is unforgettable. COCOON completely breaks how your brain processes puzzle solving by forcing a perspective shift where entire worlds exist inside small orbs. Dropping an orb powers machinery in your current reality, but jumping inside that same orb transports everything to a completely different biome with its own rules. The genius part happens when nesting a world inside another world to bypass impossible obstacles. Considering the mind-bending design packed into this thing, seeing it slash 60% to just $9.99 feels extremely generous. Solving the final few sequences delivers an absolute rush of pure realization. The Pathless completely throws out the traditional open-world playbook by deleting the map entirely and forcing pure momentum. Moving fast requires chaining together trick shots with a bow, creating a hypnotic rhythm where sprinting across a massive forest feels like a continuous flowing dance. There are no fast travel points because the actual act of getting anywhere is deeply satisfying, especially once the Eagle Companion starts launching everything into the clouds. Seeing an $8 price tag on something that originally launched around $40 makes the current 80% discount shockingly tempting. Getting lost in these woods easily eats up a weekend. INDIKA completely ignores traditional gaming conventions to deliver something aggressively weird. Following a 19th century Russian nun on a bizarre road trip while she casually chats with the devil makes for a deeply unsettling, strangely hilarious narrative. The camera angles alone feel deliberately meant to make the player uncomfortable, perfectly matching the bizarre puzzles and sudden shifts into retro pixel art minigames. It definitely lacks standard combat loops, focusing entirely on strange storytelling. Seeing a unique brain-melting trip like this sit around $8.74 with a 65% discount is fantastic. Those final hours will live in your head rent-free. Lost in Play perfectly captures the chaotic imagination of two siblings turning a boring afternoon into an epic, nonsensical adventure. The puzzles operate entirely on dream logic, requiring interactions with giant frogs, goblin rebellions, and overgrown seagulls playing cards. It genuinely looks and sounds exactly like a premium animated television show, right down to the fully gibberish language everyone speaks. Dropping from nearly $20 down to an absurd $3.99 means an 80% markdown on pure distilled joy. Watching a child's cardboard box transform into a legitimate fortress brings back a very specific kind of nostalgia. Sparklite takes familiar old-school adventure mechanics and wraps them in a world constantly fracturing and rebuilding itself. Every time a massive earthquake hits, the map scrambles, forcing adaptation instead of memorization. The entire progression loop centers around inventing completely ridiculous gadgets in a floating refuge, then dropping back down to smack corrupted monsters with a giant wrench. The combat can occasionally feel a little stiff early on, but the progression quickly smooths out those rough edges. Sitting at a 90% discount for roughly $2.48 makes this almost aggressively underpriced for the amount of gadget tinkering packed in. Cracking open the final tech upgrade changes everything. A Juggler's Tale turns its own visual style into a physical obstacle. The protagonist is literally a string puppet, and those visible strings constantly get tangled in the environment, blocking progress or forcing very specific, deliberate movements under bridges and traps. The narrator actively changes the world while telling the story, sometimes helping, sometimes suddenly deciding things need to get worse. At a massive 90% discount, grabbing this for just $1.89 is pocket change. Outside outsmarting the person literally pulling the strings delivers a fantastic emotional payoff. Sengoku Dynasty forces a desperate struggle for survival in a war-torn valley before expanding into full-blown city management. Gathering bamboo and hunting for scraps eventually evolves into designing massive, sprawling feudal Japanese villages, assigning jobs to refugees and establishing complex production chains. The interface can definitely feel a little clunky initially, but watching a tiny camp transform into a thriving, self-sustaining society is dangerously addictive. Getting a 50% cut down to $13.86 gives thousands of hours of historical city planning a very convincing entry point. Walking through a bustling marketplace you built from dirt is incredibly rewarding. MEMORIAPOLIS tackles city building by letting history dictate the layout instead of relying on perfect grid systems. Communities grow organically around specific landmarks, slowly evolving from ancient camps into sprawling, overlapping metropolises. Instead of placing every single house, decisions revolve around political influence, dealing with the Black Death and managing massive historical shifts that completely alter how the population behaves. The organic expansion leads to incredibly messy, realistic-looking streets. Slicing the price in half to $16 makes this half-price deal incredibly appealing. Watching a Roman-style forum get swallowed by medieval architecture is utterly mesmerizing. Uncle Chop's rocket shop turns the mundane act of fixing vehicles into a chaotic manual reading panic attack. Every spaceship pulling into the garage requires diagnostic tools, referencing thick rule books and trying not to accidentally detonate the fuel lines. The learning curve heavily punishes rushing, demanding actual comprehension of the weird alien wiring systems instead of just mashing buttons. Dropping 55% down to $8.99 for a game that basically forces an education in fictional mechanical engineering is brilliant. Successfully hot-wiring a hyperdrive with seconds to spare feels like defusing a bomb. The Black Grimoire Cursebreaker aims directly at that incredibly specific nostalgia for early 2000s online RPGs, minus the actual online part. Chopping trees, mining rocks, and leveling obscure skills for hours hits a very particular dopamine receptor. The animations are undeniably stiff, and the combat holds on to that clunky, click-and-wait legacy design, but that rough exterior is entirely intentional. Bringing the price down to $5.99 with a 60% discount offers a massive grind-heavy sandbox for less than a decent cup of coffee. Maxing out a crafting skill tree here feels bizarrely satisfying. Dungeon Warfare 3 weaponizes physics to create some of the most satisfying tower defense chaos imaginable. Slapping down a simple dart trap works fine, but chaining a spring trap to launch paladins into a rolling boulder that crushes them into a pit of spikes is where the real strategy lives. The combinations get increasingly ridiculous, turning narrow hallways into meat grinders. Seeing this massive box of deadly toys drop 50% to $9.49 feels like a steal considering the replayability. Figuring out how to launch an entire wave of heavily armored knights into a single lava pit never gets old. Papetura exists entirely as a handcrafted physical sculpture made completely of paper before being carefully lit and photographed. The sheer level of artistic dedication shines through every single glowing bug and crumpled monster on screen. Navigating these delicate, shadowy environments relies entirely on manipulating light to solve environmental puzzles. While the playtime might be on the shorter side, treating it as an interactive art installation justifies every penny. Paying a heavily discounted $4.19 for something literally hand-glued together in a physical studio feels wildly underpriced. Shady Knight treats combat like an aggressive, high-speed parkour playground where the floor is definitely lava and the enemies are stepping stones. Executing a slide kick into a guard, catching his dropped sword in mid-air and throwing it into a barrel of explosives happens in roughly 3 seconds. The learning curve demands quick reflexes, often leading to hilarious plummeting deaths while trying to line up the perfect grappling hook swing. Chopping the price in half to $9.99 puts this adrenaline rush right in the sweet spot. Stringing together a perfect combo room without ever touching the ground is pure bliss. Pacify excels at executing one very specific thing, taking a group of confident friends and turning them into screaming cowards. The objective always sounds simple enough on paper, like finding cursed items or burning marked dolls, but the escalating panic when the roaming monster gets angry ruins every plan. The proximity voice chat guarantees that hearing a buddy suddenly go silent down a dark hallway instantly spikes the anxiety. An already cheap price getting slashed down to $2.19 makes this an incredibly easy impulse buy. Tricking a friend into walking first into the basement is worth double the price. Which of these deals just made it into your Steam cart? Let me know below, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss the smartest gaming buys.